I'd always dreamed of owning a piece of Texas that was more than just a dusty patch of dirt. After 35 years hunched over survey equipment, plat maps, and legal descriptions as a civil engineer and licensed land surveyor, I wanted space, water, and above all, quiet. When I found the Bar M Ranch, all 300 acres of it, nestled in the rolling hills a good hour from the nearest significant town, I knew I'd found my sanctuary. The centerpiece, the absolute jewel of the property, was a pristine 20-acre lake, spring-fed and clear, hidden from any public road. They called it Lost Pines Lake, and it was entirely mine, a fact I'd verified with the meticulousness only a surveyor with decades of experience could muster before signing the papers. This was where I, Marcus Thorne, a recent widower looking for solace, planned to spend my retirement, or at least semi-retirement, fishing, tinkering, and generally not being bothered. The first year was bliss. I built a small, comfortable cabin overlooking the lake, put in a sturdy dock, and spent my days reacquainting myself with the simpler rhythms of life. The only sounds were the wind in the tall pines, the distant lowing of my neighbor Jedediah's cattle, and the occasional splash of a bass jumping in the early morning mist. I'd paid a premium for this privacy, for the buffer the surrounding ranchland provided. Little did I know, the world, or at least its most irritating representative, was about to come knocking, or rather, shrieking. Where are you watching this from? I'd love to hear if you've had your own run-ins with folks who think they own more than they do. Drop a comment below. Misery loves company, as they say, though hopefully your stories also end with a bit of triumph, like mine eventually did. It started subtly. The low thrum of construction equipment carried on the breeze from the east, beyond the thick belt of trees that marked my property line. Old Jed, a leathery man whose family had ranched these parts for generations, had mentioned something about a developer buying up the old Henderson place. "They're calling it Lakeside Meadows Estates," he drawled one afternoon when I'd stopped by his fence line, a wry smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Funny thing is, ain't no part of their land actually on a lake. Closest they get is looking over your fence at yours, Marcus." We'd chuckled about it then, but a knot of unease had formed in my stomach. HOAs. The very acronym sent a shiver down my spine. I dealt with enough of them professionally to know the kind of petty tyrannies they could breed. Still, my lake was mine, fenced and clearly delineated on every county map. Surely, they'd stick to their side. A few months later, the first houses started to peek over the tree line, cookie-cutter beige boxes with unnaturally green lawns, a stark contrast to the wild beauty of my ranch. And then, I saw her. I was down by my dock, checking the lines on my small aluminum fishing boat, when I noticed a figure on the far side of my fence, where my property abutted what was now clearly the HOA's designated common area, a strip of hastily laid sod that ended abruptly at my barbed wire. She was a woman of indeterminate middle age, dressed in aggressively bright athletic wear, a visor clamped so tightly on her head it seemed to be squeezing her thoughts into a very narrow channel. She had a clipboard in one hand and was gesturing emphatically with the other, pointing towards my lake, then back towards the new houses, talking to a man in a construction hat who looked thoroughly bored. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her posture screamed self-importance. I mentally filed her away as probably troubles and went back to my boat. My first direct encounter came a week later. I decided to clear some overgrown brush along my fence line, well within my property. It was hot, dusty work. I was sweating through my shirt when I heard a sharp, "Excuse me." "Excuse-me." I straightened up, wiping my brow. There she was, standing on her side of the fence, arms crossed, face set in a frown that could curdle milk. I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "This is Lakeside Meadows common property you're disturbing," she announced, her voice as crisp and unyielding as a starched collar. I glanced at the fence, then back at her. "No, This here is my land. The Bar M Ranch. The fence is the property line." I even gestured to one of my own bright orange survey stakes, clearly marking the boundary. She sniffed, a sound of profound disbelief. "Our plat maps clearly show this area as designated for resident enjoyment. You are creating a nuisance and potentially damaging HOA property. Now, if there's one thing I know, it's plat maps." I'd practically eaten them for breakfast for 35 years. Well, I said, a little more firmly this time, with all due respect, your plat map might show what your developer wished for, but the county records, the deeds, and the actual legally binding surveys show this land, including that fence and everything on this side of it, as mine. And that includes the lake you can see over yonder. Her eyes narrowed. The lake? That's Lakeside Meadows Lake. It's in the name. I sighed. This was going to be more tedious than I thought. The name of your development doesn't confer ownership of geographical features on adjacent properties. My name is Marcus Thorne. I own this ranch, including Lost Pines Lake. Entirely. She looked like I'd just told her the sky was plaid. That's preposterous. We have brochures. Our sales agent specifically mentioned the lake access. Then your sales agents, and perhaps your developer, have been misleading you, I said, trying to keep the exasperation out of my voice. I suggest you consult the official county records. They're quite clear. I turned back to my brush clearing, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't, of course. That was just the opening salvo from the woman I would soon come to know as Brenda, president of the Lakeside Meadows HOA, and the self-appointed guardian of a lake she didn't own. Over the next few weeks, Brenda's campaign of petty harassment escalated. It started with notes tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck when I parked it on my own access road leading down to my dock, a road that was a good 50 yards inside my property line but visible from their common area. The notes, written in an aggressive, spiky hand on official-looking HOA letterhead, warned of towing for unauthorized parking in a community recreational zone. I'd simply crumple them up and toss them in the trash. Then came the signs. Small, cheap-looking plastic signs that read, "Private property, Lakeside Meadows residents only, no trespassing." She, or someone acting on her orders, had actually wired them onto my fence, facing inwards towards my property. That was a step too far. I calmly snipped them off with wire cutters and tossed them over the fence back onto HOA land. They'd reappear a day later. This little game went on for a week. I even tried reasoning with her one more time. I caught her during one of her patrols along the fence line. I had a copy of my official survey plat, highlighted and annotated. "Brenda," I began, deciding to use her name, "I really think you need to look at this. This is the definitive map of my property. See this boundary line? And see here? The entire lake, Lost Pines Lake, is within these boundaries. Your development stops right at this fence." She barely glanced at the map I held out. Her arms were crossed, her lips pursed. "That's just your interpretation. Our documents, approved by the county, clearly state our community enjoys lakeside privileges." "Which documents are those, Brenda?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. Because any document claiming ownership or usage rights to my lake would be fraudulent. There are no easements, no shared access agreements. I own it outright. Fee simple. I used the legal term deliberately, hoping it might make her pause. It didn't. "You're just trying to intimidate us with fancy words, Mr. Thorne. We know our rights. This lake is an amenity for Lakeside Meadows. We paid for lakeside property. You paid for property near a lake, Brenda," I corrected, "a lake you have no legal right to access or use. And frankly, your continued attempts to assert authority over my land are bordering on harassment." She scoffed. "Harassment? We're protecting our investment. You're the one being unneighborly, trying to hoard a natural resource." I just shook my head. It was like arguing with a brick wall, if a brick wall wore a visor and reeked of entitlement. It was clear she viewed me as some stubborn old coot she could eventually wear down or bully into submission. She had no idea that my entire career had been about defining and defending property boundaries, often against people far more powerful and cunning than her. She was, as they say, bringing a knife to a gunfight, except my gun was an unassailable stack of legal documents and decades of expertise. Old Jed had seen some of our exchanges from his pasture. "That woman's wound tighter 'en a tick on a hound dog, Marcus," he'd observed, leaning on the fence that separated our properties, a fence that had stood in peace for 50 years. Heard tell she tried to claim a strip of Old Man Henderson's pasture before he sold up, said their Greenbelt initiative extended there. Henderson near took a scattergun to him, he chuckled. Some folks just gotta be important, even if it's just bossing folks around a patch of new houses. I knew Jed was right. Brenda was on a power trip, and my refusal to bow to her fictional authority was a direct challenge. I started keeping a more detailed log of her actions, taking photos of the signs before I removed them, noting the dates and times of her pronouncements from across the fence. I even mounted a discreet trail camera on a tree overlooking my lake access road, just in case. It felt ridiculous, like I was fortifying against an invading army of garden gnomes, but Brenda's persistence was unsettling. The real turning point, the incident that shifted my approach from weary defense to determined offense, came on a beautiful Saturday morning. I'd recently finished restoring a lovely old pontoon boat I'd bought for a song. It wasn't huge, but it was perfect for taking a few friends out on the lake, or just for me to stretch out on with a book and a fishing rod. I'd spent weeks sanding the deck, rewiring the lights, and tuning the small outboard motor. This was to be its maiden voyage on Lost Pines Lake. I backed my truck down my private gravel access road, the pontoon boat gliding smoothly on its trailer. The sun was warm, the lake was sparkling, and a gentle breeze rustled the pines. It was idyllic. I got the boat positioned at the edge of the water, near my little ramp, and was just starting to unhitch the trailer when I heard it, a shriek that could wake the dead, or at least alert every dog in a 5-mile radius. "What do you think you're doing?" There was Brenda, practically vibrating with fury on her side of the fence, her face flushed an alarming shade of crimson beneath her ever-present visor. She was actually clutching her chest as if I'd personally assaulted her. "I'm launching my boat, Brenda," I said calmly, continuing to unlatch the trailer. "On my lake. That is HOA property. You are not authorized to launch a vessel of that size. That is a restricted waterway. I'm warning you, Mr. Thorne. You are violating numerous HOA covenants." Each word was practically spat out. I paused and looked at her. "Brenda, we've been over this. This is my property. My lake. There are no HOA covenants that apply here because this isn't part of your HOA. You have no jurisdiction here. None." "We'll see about that," she seethed. And then, to my utter astonishment, she pulled out her phone and stabbed at the screen with a trembling finger. "Yes, I need to report a trespasser. He's on Lakeside Meadows Community Lake property, trying to launch a large, unauthorized boat. He's aggressive and refusing to leave. Send officers immediately." My jaw dropped. She was actually calling 911. On me. For using my own lake. A cold fury, entirely different from my previous annoyance, settled over me. This woman wasn't just a nuisance, she was actively trying to use law enforcement to enforce her delusions of grandeur. This had crossed a line. A very significant line. As she continued to spout her exaggerated claims to the dispatcher, he's threatening the peace. Endangering our residents. I made a decision. No more polite corrections. No more ignoring her. It was time to bring the full weight of legal fact down on Brenda and her ridiculous assertions. My years as a surveyor had taught me the supreme power of irrefutable documentation. I calmly walked back to my truck, unlocked the cab, and retrieved the heavy-duty waterproof document case I always kept with me when dealing with property matters. Inside were certified copies of my deed, the full survey plat of the Bar M Ranch, title insurance documents, aerial photographs with GIS overlays, and even copies of the original land patent that first delineated this parcel generations ago. I also had my professional land surveyor's license and my driver's license. I was ready. Brenda was still on the phone, her voice rising in pitch. "Yes, he's still here. He's getting things from his truck. He might be armed. Oh, hurry. Armed? With a portfolio of legal documents." I almost laughed, but the seriousness of her false accusation about being armed hit me. This woman was reckless. I made sure my hands were visible as I walked back towards the boat, placing the document case on the pontoon's console. Then I simply stood there, waiting. If she wanted a showdown with the authorities, she was going to get one. And I was going to enjoy watching it blow up in her face. Jed, who must have heard the commotion, appeared at his fence line, 100 yards away, watching with keen interest. He gave me a slow nod, as if to say, "Give them hell, Marcus." It didn't take long for the county sheriff's deputies to arrive. 2 cruisers, lights flashing, pulled up on the HOA side of the fence. 2 deputies, a man and a woman, both looking wary and professional, got out. Brenda practically ran to them, a torrent of accusations pouring out of her. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man, Thorne, is trespassing on our HOA lake. He's trying to launch this enormous boat, and he refuses to leave. He's been a constant problem, claiming our lake is his. He's very belligerent." The male deputy, whose name tag read Miller, held up a hand to stem her flow. "Please, one moment." He looked across the fence at me. I was standing calmly by my boat, my hands resting on the gunwales. "Sir, can you tell us what's happening here?" "Certainly, deputy," I said, my voice even and polite. "My name is Marcus Thorne. This is my property, the Bar M Ranch. This is my private lake, Lost Pines Lake. And this is my boat, which I am in the process of launching on my lake." Brenda exploded. "That's a lie. This is Lakeside Meadows. It's our lake. He's trying to steal our amenities. He's probably forged those documents he's got there." She pointed a shaking finger at my document case. Deputy Miller looked at Brenda, then back at me. "Sir, do you have any documentation to support your claim of ownership?" "Indeed, I do," I replied. "I have my deed, the official county survey plat, title insurance, and my professional credentials as a licensed land surveyor, which might help in interpreting these documents. Would you like to see them?" "Yes, please," said Deputy Miller, while his partner, Deputy Ramirez, kept a watchful eye on Brenda, who was now pacing back and forth, muttering about incompetence and HOA rights. I carefully unlatched my document case and pulled out the primary survey plat first. It was a large, detailed drawing, professionally rendered. I spread it on the hood of my truck, which was still on my property. "If you'd like to step over the fence, officers, or I can pass them to you. This fence marks the precise boundary line as per county records." Deputy Miller nodded. "We'll stay on this side for now, sir. Can you hold it up?" I did, pointing out the key features. "As you can see, this entire parcel, outlined in red, constitutes the Bar M Ranch, owned by me, Marcus Thorne. The parcel number is clearly marked here, matching county tax records. And this body of water, Lost Pines Lake, is situated entirely within the boundaries of my property. The Lakeside Meadows development, as per their own filed plats, abuts my property along this eastern fence line only. They have no frontage on, or legal access to, this lake." Brenda was practically hopping with rage. "That's a fake. It must be a fake. Our developers assured us. We have brochures showing the lake." Deputy Ramirez finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Brochures are not legal documents. We need to see what Mr. Thorne has." She then addressed me. "Sir, do you have a deed?" "Right here," I said, pulling out the certified copy. I held it up. "Recorded in, specific county, book, number, page, number. You can verify it with your dispatcher if you wish." I also showed them my driver's license and my surveyor's license. Deputy Miller took out his radio and relayed the information from the deed to dispatch. While they waited, Brenda continued her tirade. "He's a con artist. He's trying to trick you. This has been HOA common property for months. We've been maintaining it." "Maintaining what, Brenda?" I asked, an edge of steel in my voice now. "You mean putting up illegal signs on my fence? Or perhaps you've been trespassing too, what? Skim leaves from my lake. My trail camera had, in fact, caught one of the HOA's landscaping crew tentatively reaching over the fence with a long-handled skimmer a few weeks back before retreating when he saw my truck approaching. I hadn't made an issue of it then, but her current audacity was astounding. A few curious residents from Lakeside Meadows had started to gather at a respectful distance, drawn by the flashing lights and Brenda's raised voice. They were watching the drama unfold with considerable interest. I could see the uncertainty on their faces as they listened. Deputy Miller's radio crackled. He listened intently, nodded, then looked back at me. A subtle shift had occurred in his demeanor. The wariness was still there, but it was now tinged with something else, perhaps a dawning understanding. Dispatch confirms, Mr. Thorne. Property records show this parcel, including the lake, registered to you. They also confirm your identity. He then turned to Brenda, his expression significantly more stern. It appears Mr. Thorne is indeed the legal owner of this land and the lake. Brenda's face went from crimson to a blotchy white. No. That can't be right. Dispatch is wrong. Your records are wrong. The county is wrong. Everyone is wrong except me. She was becoming hysterical. We have a right to that lake. It's in our name. Lakeside Meadows. Deputy Ramirez said, stepping forward slightly. The name of a development does not grant property rights. Based on the official records, Mr. Thorne is on his own property, using his own boat on his own lake. You, on the other hand, appear to have called 911 to report a lawful activity as a trespass. The weight of those words seemed to finally penetrate Brenda's fury, replacing it with a dawning horror. Her eyes widened. But our HOA fees cover lake maintenance, she stammered, grasping at straws. Then your HOA has been collecting fees for maintaining property it doesn't own and has no right to access, I stated flatly. Which, depending on your HOA's bylaws and disclosures to residents, could be a rather serious issue for your board, Brenda. Possibly even fraudulent. The other HOA residents who had gathered were now murmuring amongst themselves, their expressions ranging from confused to concerned to downright angry, and not at me. One man called out, Brenda, did you know about this? We've been paying an extra assessment for the lakeside beautification. Brenda looked trapped. She sputtered, it's a misunderstanding. The developers, they must have made a mistake in the paperwork. There's no mistake in my paperwork, Brenda, I said, tapping my document case. And I assure you, the county records are quite accurate. I surveyed this land myself before I bought it. Every boundary marker, every meets and bounds description is correct and legally defensible. My professional pride was now fully engaged. This wasn't just about my lake, it was about the sanctity of property rights and the accuracy of the records I'd built my career on. Deputy Miller addressed Brenda directly. Making a false report to emergency services is a serious offense. We're going to give you a warning this time. Given the apparent confusion, his tone suggested he didn't believe for a second it was mere confusion on her part. But you are to cease harassing Mr. Thorne. He is within his rights. You and the other residents of Lakeside Meadows are to stay off his property, which includes the lake and the land surrounding it up to this fence line. Is that understood? Brenda just stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. The fight had completely drained out of her. She looked small and deflated, her visor askew. Is that understood? Deputy Miller repeated, his voice brooking no argument. Yes, she whispered, defeated. Good. He then turned to me. Mr. Thorne, I apologize for the inconvenience. It seems this was a significant misunderstanding on the part of the complainant. No harm done, Deputy, I said, though my blood pressure was probably still a bit elevated. Thank you for your professionalism in resolving this. The deputies gave Brenda one last warning look, then returned to their cruisers. As they drove away, the small crowd of HOA residents began to pepper Brenda with questions, their voices no longer deferential but demanding. I didn't stick around to listen to her try and explain her way out of that one. I had a boat to launch. With a feeling of profound satisfaction, I hitched the pontoon back up, backed it smoothly into the cool, clear water of my lake, and unhooked it. The motor started on the first try. As I idled away from the shore, I gave a small wave to old Jed, who was now grinning broadly from his fence line, giving me a thumbs up. I might have even done a little victory lap in the middle of Lost Pines Lake, the ripples spreading out behind my boat like a triumphant sigh. The immediate aftermath was, for me, blissfully quiet. Brenda seemed to have vanished. I saw her a couple of times, from a distance, scurrying between houses in lakeside meadows, but she never made eye contact, never approached my fence line again. The illegal signs did not reappear. A week later, I drafted a very polite, very formal letter to the Lakeside Meadows Homeowners Association Board of Directors, with a copy specifically addressed to Ms. Brenda last name. I'd made a point of getting her full name from the deputies. In it, I reiterated the facts of my ownership, enclosed photocopies of my deed and the relevant section of the survey plat, and detailed the incident involving the 911 call. I stated, quite clearly, that any further attempts by any representative of the HOA to trespass on my property, harass me, or make any claims to my land or lake would result in immediate legal action, including but not limited to, suits for trespass, harassment, and defamation of title. I sent it via certified mail, return receipt requested. I also had my lawyer, an old friend from my university days, send a similar, albeit more legally threatening, letter. I heard through the grapevine, mostly via Jed, who had an uncanny ability to know everything that happened within a 10-mile radius, that Brenda's tenure as HOA president became rather rocky after that. Apparently, when the other residents realized they'd been paying for lake access and lake maintenance for a lake they had no right to even look at too closely, they were less than pleased. There were calls for audits, for Brenda's resignation. The phrase potential class action lawsuit against the developer and the HOA board was allegedly bandied about at a rather heated emergency HOA meeting. I put up new, very prominent private property, Bar M Ranch, no trespassing signs along my fence line facing the HOA. These were professionally made, metal signs, deeply set in concrete. They weren't going anywhere. I also, for my own private amusement, christened my pontoon boat the Adjudicator. It seemed fitting. Life on the Bar M Ranch returned to its peaceful rhythm. I fished, I tinkered, I watched the hawks circle over Lost Pines Lake. The only difference was that now, when I looked across the water towards the beige boxes of Lakeside Meadows, I did so with a faint, satisfied smile. It's a funny thing, isn't it? How some people, given a little bit of petty authority, will try to expand their kingdom into lands that are not, and never will be, theirs. And how satisfying it is, armed with nothing more than the truth and a well-documented survey plat, to put them firmly back in their place. Brenda eventually resigned as HOA president, under a cloud of accusations and homeowner fury. The Lakeside Beautification Fund was reportedly reallocated to fixing potholes in their own private roads, a far less glamorous but decidedly more appropriate use of their funds. As for me, I continued to enjoy my lake, my solitude, and the unshakable knowledge that my boundaries were secure, both on paper and in reality. Sometimes, standing up to a petty tyrant isn't just about defending your own patch, it's about upholding a principle. And in my case, it also ensured many more peaceful days fishing on the Adjudicator, on waters that were, indisputably, mine.